All right, so welcome, hello Internet, welcome everybody to our annual MathStats Career Day for spring 2022. As I at the last minute made this slide, not more than 10 minutes ago. So I thought we since we're still waiting for one panelist to log in, I thought we'd actually start with so there's a bunch of people right now. Posting stuff on the chat. A bunch of the students who are here posting on the chat, sort of saying where they are in their job search, and it seems that a lot of people are sort of just looking, and the states are just looking, applying, resume writing, which is an interesting one, and interviewing. So Judy, the person who's going to be our last panelist, but I think is maybe not going to be our first panelist, is Judith Garcia from the San Jose State Career Center. And Judy, could you say a few words about like if people are at the stage of like just looking or applying or resume writing or interviewing, what the Career Center can do for people in those four stages?
Okay. Well, hi everyone, and welcome. And I'm looking forward to hearing from these panelists because love hearing from all of you working in the field and can share your experience with your education and how you got your job, how you're in your position that you are now. And this is great advice for students. So I'm in the Career Center. I'm a career counselor. I've been here at San Jose State for about 4 years. And what we do is we help students find internships and jobs. And our team, we can help you with all the things that I'm seeing posted here. So help you with putting together a marketable resume for your job search. We help you create and update your LinkedIn profile. So I don't want to forget about LinkedIn because LinkedIn is an important aspect to all this. And it's a chance for you to build a professional network of people in the field and people you want to connect with for your career growth. We help with interviewing practice, with just job and internship search in general. And we primarily use Handshake as a tool here at San Jose State. And we help with assisting all of you with how to effectively network, networking online and in person. Online's been, more of the focus these last couple of years, but we know from alumni and a lot of other professionals that networking is key, and that's how many people find their positions. It's not from a job board, but it's actually from a referral or talking to people like these panelists today. So that's it. So it's nice to see all of you.
Okay, thanks, Judy. Yeah. So, you want to put your email on the? I mean, people can guess what your email is.
I'll put the link to the Career Center on here too.
On the chat, that'd be great.
And my email as well.
Okay, thanst So everybody who's here live, please look on the chat for that. Yeah. So indeed, our last panelist is having trouble signing on. So if I look distracted, it's because I'm trying to help the last panelist sign on. So I think in fact maybe so to avoid being distracted, I'm going to turn off my video. I know I love ordinarily putting my smiling face on a piece of video, but I'll refrain for now. And can we just sort of go around the horn and have everybody introduce themselves and say say what degree you got from San Jose State and what you're doing now. So and let's start with Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Lampkin. I graduated 2008. I got a BS in applied mathematics from the math department. Yeah, so I was studying with all the teachers, and I forget the last question. What's it?
Where are you now? What are you doing what are you doing to make a buck now?
So I'm working at ShotSpotter. The junior algorithms engineer is the title I got hired with. I wound up maybe being titled a software engineer, maybe being titled a data analyst. It was really, do everything helpful, help us out, and this and that, and that's kind of that's what the company wants, really, is just try to fill any shoes, any role you can. And
Okay, cool. I will get to more of that in more detail in a bit. Okay, let's see. Raquel is the person who's having trouble logging in. So we'll skip over to Cordelia. Go ahead. Oh, Cordelia, whom you may know as Cordelia Carlisle, is now Cordelia Radin. Congratulations. And if you could go ahead and sort of say like when you graduated and with what degree and what you're up to now.
All right, my name is Cordelia. I graduated in 2021 with my Master's of Science in Mathematics. So I am currently working at Bolt Threads as an associate quality engineer. So Bolt Threads is a sustainable materials company. We make vegan leather from mushrooms for companies like Adidas, Hermes, Lululemon, Stella McCartney. And what a quality engineer does is essentially we're one of the mathiest of the engineers. We build statistical models and machine learning models to optimize our process. So yeah, I spend most of my time coding and deploying machine learning models.
And the last of our folks who are here right now is Violet Weiler. So Violet, if you can sort of say a word about yourself, and so when you graduated, with what degree, and what you're doing up to now.
Okay. My name is Violet Weiler. I graduated December 2019 with a BA in math prep for teaching. I'm not a teacher, but I'm currently a credit admin analyst at River City Bank. So I work with a lot of financial statements for commercial loans. I do covenant analysis, so sort of work with a lot of ratios to confirm if borrowers are in compliance with the terms and conditions of their loans. I work with a lot of appraisals, environmental and seismic reports. So we pull numbers from there as well for new loans and just various projects related to the commercial loan portfolio.
Okay, very cool. All right, so I'm still having trouble getting to Raquel. So let's see. So let's going back up to the top. Scott, could you just sort of say, now we're going to sort of get into the longer questions, sort of say how you got your first job, what you're sort of in what you're doing, how what you learned in your degree is sort of shows up in your day-to-day work life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but first job or this job?
Both, actually.
Well, first job was through a friend, and that was Starbucks, which actually, that was 3-4 years or so. And
so first job after graduation is this thing, though, right?
This is the first one after graduation. But that Starbucks job, actually, they told me I helped convince them to hire me because they said I could deal with some stuff and deal with people. So
I see.
Yeah. But linear programming actually popped up recently. That was kind of a fun.
Wait, but how'd you get this job?
How'd I get this job? Kind of. I think you might have put in a word somewhere, and then
right, there was a headhunter involved.
Yes. So I got recruited, and the person who's my boss has a wife who's in charge of a math department at Oberlin College. So we could talk to each other very efficiently and effectively.
I know her, Elizabeth Wilbur. We go way back.
No, maybe.
Yeah. There's only one. No, and she told me once her husband was involved in inventing ShotSpotter. So
that's right.
It's a very small world, my friend.
I forgot that. Yeah, my boss's name is Rob Calhoun. So okay, yes, but yeah, so we just could communicate really well and really effectively, and my boss understood where I was coming from and what I knew and what I could help with. So that's kind of what led into an area of, well, I know what you can do here, and he just turns me at different problems.
So it just turned out that your now boss was compatible with mathematicians being married to one.
Very, yes.
Well, you can ask my family. It's a select bunch of people who are willing to put up with mathematicians. So
it's a unique bunch.
Appreciate it. Well, gosh, I wasn't expecting. I sort of vaguely had remembered that, but I didn't see his name anywhere on the masthead. So well, no, I must be mistaken. But no,
he's on there, not on the board or anything, but it should be a founder.
Well, please tell tell your boss to tell Elizabeth I said hi.
Will do.
I haven't talked to her in like 20 years, but small
Will do.
world, huh? Well, I get Judy, as you always say, it's all about connections and. Oh, you're muted. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Perfect example. I just love the fact that I just love the fact that your Starbucks experience was part of the reason you might have gotten this job.
It convinced some of the computer scientists, software engineers that, you know, I can work with them and I can work with
that makes sense.
That's great. That's
even
great.
Even if I'm coming from a different knowledge base, I can still, you know, interface.
That makes sense.
That's why I tell students to put this information on their resume, because some of them don't want to say I was a barista at Starbucks, and they don't want to put it on their resume because
I did.
Not relevant. So that's great advice. I'm glad
it's not
Judy,
the most relevant skill-wise, but as far as interacting, it can be.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a skill. It is not a skill that all mathematicians have, which is maybe why the computer scientists weren't so interested in this. But you know, yeah, pot calling kettle black there on both sides. Judy, can you? No offense, computer scientists. All love. All said and love. Judy, can you just say briefly what a headhunter is? Because I don't know if I have that definition on the tip of my fingertips.
Actually, I'm wondering if the panel might have a better shot at it, because we are career counselors. We are not headhunters, so to speak.
Well, the one I work with, she of her own volition goes and finds people that she thinks she can get jobs for. Yeah. So she'll ask, you know, heads of departments or, you know, Dr. Shu, like, who do you think?
Yeah, and okay, so
I don't know what they exactly asked you, but
that was through me.
Number from you.
That was probably through me. And then they probably, and she probably asked, I don't remember exactly what I said. I think she probably asked me for someone with good sort of, you know, who was a math, you was like, you know, of course in math, because, you know, those are people I know, but who had like good programming skills. And Scott, you had done or were doing CamCost at the time. Am I remembering that correctly?
I did CamCost, and I also took an upper div for game theory with Dr. Fryer.
Yeah, I think I knew. I definitely knew about the CamCost. So I think I said, well, here's a person who's in this. It's done well, and so, you know, so we'll circle back to this CamCost program, which has actually taken some interesting and remarkable turns in the last few years. Yeah. So, okay. Spoiler alert. I mean, so Ethereum is now sort of running based on CamCost technology, which is something you can really brag about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's pretty awesome. Hey, Raquel's here. Okay, just in time. Hi, Raquel. Can you turn on your camera and turn on your mic and say hello?
Hi. So my camera's on, but is my video on?
Yeah, your video is now on. There you are.
Huh?
You're up.
Oh, okay. So you do see me. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I have a master's in statistics. I graduated a few years ago from San Jose State, and I currently work at Google. I started working about 3 months here, so I'm still fairly new at Google. I work on the Pixel team. So looking at like loyalty metrics of people who purchase, you know, Pixel phones and that sort of thing. Prior to Google, I worked at a company called First Data. That was my first job out of college. And at that job, I worked mostly with credit card and debit card data. So like, what are people buying, you know, looking at their trends over time. They process like half of the US credit and debit transactions. So we had a lot of large data. And so I used mostly like SQL and a little Python and R. And while I was at San Jose State, I think some very useful things that I learned was, one was I worked as a teaching assistant at San Jose State for about 2 years. And I really think, you know, when I got this job at Google and also when I got my first job, they seemed to really like that I worked as a teacher, because sometimes when you work with stakeholders, you really have to be able to communicate complicated terminology to people who we're not always very technical. And so I think those skills are very good. And then while I was in college, we also did a lot of like art programming and a lot of hands-on like projects. And so I think that really did help prepare me for getting my first job. And let's see, what else can I say? I think that was all the questions, right? Were there any other questions?
Yeah. Oh, how did you get your first job? Do you remember? And how did you get
Okay.
your current job at Google?
Okay, so my current job at Google actually got on LinkedIn, some recruiter reached out to me. And so all I did was like, after a few years of working at my first job, right, I thought like, okay, I'm ready for a change. So I switched on my LinkedIn to like open to, like so that only recruiters can see that you're open to something.
Oh, I
Yeah,
did
'cause
not
there's
know that. That's interesting.
yeah, you don't want everyone to see it because then your
You
current
don't want your
employer-
boss to see I'm open to leaving your company.
Yes, exactly. So anyways, from that setting, I got reached out from a recruiter. And so that's how I got my job at Google. I think it's better because a lot of people like apply. Sometimes it's harder when you apply because so many people apply that you don't really get like, it's better for them to reach out to you. You have a better chance. And then my first job, I honestly don't remember exactly because I remember right before I was graduating, I was applying on Simply Hired, Indeed.com, LinkedIn, everywhere. I was just submitting a lot of applications. And 2 days after I graduated, this company reached out to me, and then I started like exactly 1 month after I graduated. And so that was really good that I didn't have to wait too much. I kind of started right away. But I had a lot of internships that I had done while I was in college. And so like in addition to working as a teaching assistant, I did an internship at NASA and also one at PG&E. And so Oh, and I also worked like as a workshop facilitator for like remedial math and calculus. And so I had some experience, which I think helped me get that first job. So I guess piece of advice is just try to do a lot of internships or, try to work on campus, try to get some sort of experience that can really help you.
And that's actually there being a TA is sort of harder to get to. You have to be a graduate student, for example.
Mhm.
But we really need facilitators.
Yeah.
As workshop facilitators, as Raquel was just saying. So if you want to get some, if you have decent grades and you're willing to at least work on your communication skills, we really need capable workshop facilitators. I prefer to hire only math people if I can. Math stats people, and so you have an advantage over everybody else, and we generally are able to hire. And if you're doing okay in school, and we are generally able to hire you at least in the fall. So that's not, I mean, it's not 100% sure thing. What is there sure in life? But it's a pretty sure bet that you can get some kind of position in that, and therefore some kind of experience. So Raquel, that's a fantastic suggestion. Geez, and so you got recruited to Google, huh?
Yeah.
Like how long a pause was it between when you put up this, say I'm open to network or whatever, and then that first phone call?
I think it was a few months. It might have been because I put that I'm open, but I was doing a lot of other recruiters reached out to me, so I kept trying for a lot of big companies. And then every time I failed, I learned a lot from it. And so Google was like the very last one that reached out. And so by then I think I had learned a lot of like, because when you're in school, you do a lot of like probability, a lot of different things, right? But once you're working, you tend to, if you don't use something, you forget it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to review a lot of things that I had learned in college in order to prepare for the interviews.
Oh wow! So there were I guess Google especially is famous for having quizzes in its interviews.
Yeah, Google was very different. Like not all companies are the same. I'd say one thing that's very similar from a lot of big companies is they'll ask you a lot of like a random question, unstructured, and you have to kind of add structure to it. And they want to know like your thought process. And so like you might want to look at like PM exercises or, certain places online that are good where you can, try to figure out like what kind of framework to follow, because you really have to be very organized in how you approach your answer.
Oh, cool. And let me put in a plug for our program here. It's also true that you can do CAMCOS, and CAMCOS is all about taking an ill-formed question and then making it into a precise math stats question. So again, I'm sure we'll circle back to that at some point. Yeah, that's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, I did one of those actually.
Oh, you did that one too. So I think
Yeah.
I think that with Cordelia, who's up next, I think that makes at least three. Violet, did you ever do camp class?
No, I didn't do that.
All right, but I think everybody else here. Kudos to you. You still got a job, but everybody else here actually got job experience through camp class. Speaking of which, our next panel, and thank you, Raquel, for making it. Sorry you had so much trouble like logging on, but our next panelist is Cordelia, and Cordelia. So you want to say like tell a bit about your story, how you got your first job, how you got this. Wait, I think you already said that already. What your day-to-day life is like, and what how math sort of shows up in your day-to-day life.
Well, so I actually didn't work on Camcos. So okay, also the way I got my job was kind of unique. I pretty much just like figured it out from scratch. Like I made my LinkedIn and I was just like crunching LeetCode code and I was just like applying everywhere because I was going for more technical roles. I interviewed with like a bunch of different companies and it came down to a couple. I did so something I would advise if you're going for technical roles, really prepare yourself because tech interviews are a hustle, like between take homes and live leak codes. Sometimes I had like 6-hour panel interviews. They could be a lot. So prepare yourself. And I think to echo what Raquel said, like you get better and better, like you iterate and you learn. Ultimately, it came down between two companies and I chose my company Bold Threads because it really aligned with my values and I liked the role. So the role itself, I use what I learned constantly. Like I use especially like statistics from undergrad, from graduate school. Like I'm just like buried in math and I love it. And I use so much of what I learned. But what is most useful is all throughout school, like both my degrees are applied. And so I really like forced myself and taught myself like programming. Anytime I had any opportunity, I used coding to do projects. That came in handy because I do all of my work in Python. I use a little bit of R sometimes for a little bit of analysis, but most of my work is in programming. And if you want a technical role, you really, that can really help you. Also, to also talk about what Scott said. So something I also found really useful for the interview process is I actually worked in the food service industry all through college and I TA'd here at San Jose State and it taught me a lot of really great people skills. And when you're applying for technical roles, it makes you stand out. So it helps you be a better communicator. So all of these things can really provide great value.
Yeah, I always say if you're a math stats person with actual social skills, you can rule the world because it's not such a common intersection necessarily. So Cordelia, when we communicated, you said you had some secrets to share. Did you get all those out, or is there anything else you want to mention?
Okay, so definitely for any of you folks that are trying to get into technical role, start practicing your LeetCode now. Like, don't hold off. Like, even just put in a half hour every single night. Like, and start with the easy problems and start just to build a profile. For all of you data science folks, start doing Kaggle projects. There is Tableau public, and so you can make a public profile. And so when you're interviewing and they're gonna Google your name, they're gonna see your Tableau public profile, and so they'll associate you with already having done these projects. So these are just like a couple tips that'll really make you shine and make you like stand above other folks.
All right.
Yeah,
as a mere academic, I'm gonna have to rewind and ask you what LeetCode is.
Okay, so LeetCode, so it's little coding trials and there are different levels. And so like the way that they test your coding skills for technical roles now for any kind of engineering or engineering adjacent role is that they'll give you like a LeetCode problem. So they might ask you to like, do some function on some kind of like linked list or sort something or whatever. And there are different levels from very easy to extremely difficult, right? And these are called leak code problems. And leak code is like the actual site, and you can build a profile and do problems, and you time yourself, and also it'll help you create more elegant solutions in any number of languages. But this is kind of the industry standard. And thank you, Scott. And I had to do a couple of these live, like they watch you live. And so like you need to start practicing, because like with the added like nervousness and anxiety of doing it live, like it's really easy to crash and burn, even when you like, you know this, like, so get started on that now. Yeah. Yeah, because I definitely crashed and burned on my first couple. So start now.
And so people make you do this live in the
Yeah.
interview?
Yeah.
You're like, here's a leak
And-
problem, go do it.
Yeah, but they're the best case scenario are take homes. So take homes are like these take home assignments, and
Right.
this might be like more, those are usually more like product, like product roles or data science roles, right? But and so you can have time to do this on your own. But yeah, but if anyone's looking to get into like very technical roles, then you're gonna run into leak code.
Go make friends with leak code.
Yeah.
Okay, and what was the Kaggle competitions? That I vaguely, those are like prediction competitions?
So Kaggle is a data site. So there's like innumerable like data sets. And so you can use all these different data sites to practice on. You can like have practice with big data, and there are little competitions that you can enter with other folks all around the world to just kind of like practice your data science skills. And I did a bunch of those in my free time, and they're fun and they really help.
Okay, and how do you spell that again?
Kaggle.
Yeah, KAGGLE.com, I assume.
Yeah. And all of these things, like these are just like little things, and they like, if you just say, hey, I'm going to dedicate a half hour like every night or every other night, but all of these things are really, really going to make you stand out from the crowd. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Cordelia. Yeah, so those are two great sites at leakcode.com and kaggle.com. And let's see. Actually, let's have a show of hands here among our four alumni panelists. Or how many? So I don't know, you just raise your hand. I think I can actually see you. So how many of you had some kind of quiz in your interview? So Cordelia definitely. Mm-hmm. Yes, Violet, Scott, Raquel. Kel, did you have a quiz?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is like a. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like how to take home, and then also on the in-person interviews, there's a lot of different questions.
So this is somehow the local culture is that people have these quiz interviews. There's a good question. So is there? Maybe this is. So in general, I want and Violet, we're going to get to you in a sec. I'd like everybody to sort of put questions on the chat, and then we'll sort of circle back to those. But since this is so immediate, is there a fee for Kaggle? Because
everything I mentioned is open source, so it's
there's no fee for leak code either.
No.
Okay, great. Violet, go ahead. So how does math show up in? Wait, I can multi-pin. Okay, fantastic. So so what was your degree, and how does that degree show up in your daily life, daily work life?
So I actually got a BA in math, the prep for teaching math, but I sort of figured out at the end of like junior year or so that I didn't want to do teaching after I did some observations, and just for I decided that it maybe wasn't for me. But at that point, just like financially and with time, it just didn't make any sense for me to change my degree. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and finish this, and I'll figure it out, So once I graduated December 19, so like before COVID, and I just
you just got in under the wire.
Yeah. So I started applying to like a bunch of like random positions in companies. I was like, all right, well, I just need to do something because I just graduated and I have like student loans and stuff. So there was that pressure to just like throw out a bunch of different things, not knowing what I really wanted. And like, when you graduate, you'll have like internships in college and stuff, but there'll be an entry-level position. They ask for like 5 years of experience. So I was nervous in applying for things like that. I was really like lost in that process. So I started with that, just like applying randomly. And then I decided to sort of research companies because I thought it would help me sort of hone in my search a little bit better. And so I came across River City Bank, which is where I work now. And I really liked like the values that the company had, but I just wasn't sure how, like with my degree, I could fit into a bank or what I should apply for. So I messaged the recruiter because I saw her on LinkedIn, and I was like, hey, like I'm interested in your company. Just gave like a little spiel about my background and asked her what she thought maybe I would be good in or could apply for. So I started working with her, and then she recommended me to apply for a certain position. So I applied for that. I didn't end up getting that one, but I took another position at the company that it honestly wasn't what I really wanted to be doing. But when I was in the interview and when I got hired, I was very honest about like, hey, like I'm looking for more than this. I'm looking for growth and opportunities. So if like there's anything like I really want to be doing more. So they were very aware of that and they respected that. This is important for later. So I started working, I worked in one of the branches and I got hired in February 2020 and then COVID happened. And for banks, it was a really crazy time because all these businesses started to struggle. And through the SBA, the Small Business Administration, they started doing paycheck protection loans for small businesses. And our credit team had the regular workload, which was already a lot, plus all these people that are rushing, trying to get these loans. And so they remembered that I was looking for more opportunity. So they pulled me from the branch and they were like, hey, you're going to start doing loan underwriting. And I was like, okay.
but just for reference, what was your first position?
So I was like a customer service rep. So I just worked in one of the branches, just doing like general transactional stuff.
And they're like, oh my God, we need people to do loans. And they just came down and got you.
Yeah. And the thing with having a math degree is people are going to think that you're smart and capable, which you are because you got a math degree. So, yeah, so they pulled me and I had to learn so much, but I think even one of the things in math is like, you really got to pick up on things pretty quickly. I feel like that's something we all kind of share, is that sort of natural ability to do that. And so I just like so much work writing these loans for all these people. They're all like panicked, so they're stressed and you're trying to collect things from them. Being able to like communicate with people is really important, especially during like such a hectic time. So I was doing that and they appreciated my work ethic, that I could learn quickly. And so our CCO, the chief credit officer, he was like, hey, we actually have this position, which is my current position. Like, we really like you. We think you'd be great for this. And then I got to stay here at corporate. So they were able to see it through sort of like demonstrated work that I really wanted to do something and that I was capable, even though I didn't have like background in finance or anything like that. I was still able to really grow into the role, and it's been great. Like, I've learned so much here. There's always people that are willing to teach, and if you're willing to learn, like, I feel like finding mentors is really important because those people have so much knowledge, and when they're willing to like pass that down to you, it has so much value, and then they're like sort of an advocate for you within the company. And so they'll sort of always like think of you when there's like projects or something. So I really like being able to like help out and being that person that people know like sort of always wants to grow and develop. But yeah, so in terms of like the degree, it's sort of like I get to see numbers in a sort of different context because it's finance, which I didn't know much about, but it's very important, especially for loans, because you have to evaluate risk and measure all sorts of like ratios and stuff to make sure that people are where they need to be at to be able to pay off their loans and for their businesses to be successful. So it's been a lot to try to learn just because pretty much everyone here does have this sort of finance background. So it's a little bit of catch up, but I think that it's good to still be learning and developing. And it's even if you graduate and you don't know what you're doing or whatever, like you can still end up falling into something good and finding people willing to support your learning. And that's been something that's super helpful for me.
Fantastic. I have to say, I'm really happy to see that at least at least for the 75 minutes you agreed to be here, you all seem to enjoy your jobs, which like kind of warms my heart having known all of you before. So I'm glad to see you're doing something that is at least a little bit fulfilling. So just to emphasize, to underline a couple things that Violet just said. Violet, what class did you take from me? I can't forget what classes did you take from me. Do you remember? Do you even remember now?
I took abstract
algebra, yeah.
120A, and I took 131A, I think. I don't remember the title.
yeah. So analysis. So I think one of the things, those are things that do not obviously relate to banking. You probably don't do a whole lot of abstract algebra right now.
Yeah.
But I think, but as Violet was just saying, one of the things, I mean, what you sort of get out of that is a certain, well, gently, positively, might say confidence. Negatively, but not entirely negatively, you might say a bit of arrogance. You're like, I survived abstract algebra with Shu. How bad could corporate regulation be? How hard could it be to learn it all in a week? I did that in his class, so I could learn this. This is easier. And arrogantly, I'd say, like, on my own part, I kind of get the impression this is like maybe a little bit true. So maybe kind of a little bit true that it's whatever it was is not as hard as school was.
It's definitely different. I don't have to sit up and solve problems in front of anybody. But
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, there's still problem solving, and there's still like being able to explain your work to people, because even if maybe you think your work can speak for itself, maybe the other person needs help understanding, and to be able to really like go through that with someone that maybe they're in a different department, they don't really understand what you're saying. That's super important as well.
And so another thing that all four of you have in common is that all four of you are using your communication skills all the time. Three of you from teaching or teaching-ish things, and Scott from working at Starbucks, and sure, I'm sure doing presentations at campus and stuff. So that's something that all of you are using, and it's helping your success. I think that's true. And let me see, am I also correct in that all four of you are doing some kind of statistics all the time?
Yes.
Okay. And Violet, that's probably the school math that you come into contact with the most. Like, the probability. What is the probability of this loan defaulting or something?
Maybe like not necessarily like that. We do have certain like ways of measuring stuff, but it's, I don't know. I think it's maybe a little bit different in the way of like the programs that are used and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe there might be like a black box that you put the stuff into, and that block's but I would assume that black box has some statistics hidden inside it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, so right, as they say to the graduates, I have one word for you, plastics. This is, well, as you may have heard recently, we have one word for you, and it is statistics. If you're going to get a real job. Okay, all right. So I think I mentioned earlier, but maybe I didn't mention quite so clearly. Everybody, so now we're going to try to open up the floor for questions. There's about 25 minutes. Oh, Judy, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think this is great. And actually, one of the things I do want to add is, now I think about this after listening to Violet, I talk to students, math majors, that really are not sure what they want to do or how marketable their degree is. And I kind of have to remind them sometimes that many of them take it into finance and get into banking and other areas of that. It's not necessarily tech. And so, Violet, thanks for your information. Thanks for your story, because, it's like you didn't really see yourself going in this direction, but now you have this great experience, and it will certainly serve you for the future. So that's great.
Fantastic. Thanks for adding that. So everybody, if you we'll circle back in just a bit to collect the questions that have been on the chat along the way. But if you could just sort of put those, if you have more questions that have come up now, if you just put them on the chat, and we'll sort of try to handle them in order. I guess, from what Violet and Judy were just saying, I can't help but remember, like, when I was your age, well, okay, 30 years ago, roughly, when I graduated with my PhD, what happened was that it was actually kind of hard for PhDs to get academic jobs, So what happens is like a lot of the people that I graduated who all had PhDs in stuff like abstract algebra or analysis, they went off and got finance jobs. Like, oh, I can't get a job teaching calculus. So I'm just going to go make $1 bazillion on Wall Street, which is a thing that people did because we were at Princeton. And you had that little imprimatur. So yeah, they went off and made $1 bazillion on Wall Street, and they also wrecked the economy at one point. But besides that one detail, it's a great life. And actually, a lot of the people I knew who were in sort of pure math at the time with PhDs, like went off and made like $1 bazillion. Like one guy I know, I was like his roommate at nerd camp. He went off and got $1 bazillion and then retired at the age of 40 or something, and then founded the Museum of Mathematics in New York City. So there are worse things than going off and making a bunch of money. Anyway. Okay, so let's circle back and get some of those questions. So as a Caleb, I hope you're still here. So Caleb asked, you want to ask your question again out loud?
Oh yeah, I was wondering how hard it is to get a data science like job without a master's degree, like just straight out of undergrad.
So I think this is a job for Raquel, a question for Raquel in many ways.
Well, so I don't know. I think it really depends on your journey. For example, when I was an undergrad, I did a lot of internships. And so I was able to get internships even before I had my master's. But I really feel like the master's honestly is really what prepared me, because I feel like with undergrad, like in terms of like the stats, that's when you really get into the stats, like precision versus recall, and you do more programming and like hands-on working with raw data. So I think in terms of preparation, the master's degree really, really helps. But I'm not like, it might not be like other people mentioned, like on Kaggle, you can do exercises and stuff. So it really depends on you as well. Like if you don't get the master's, then you have to be very proactive and try to get all that hands-on experience by, going online and learning a few things like Python and just doing your own exercises. But for me, like in my experience, I feel like it helped to have a master's.
So Caleb, that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that did.
Yeah, but it definitely takes time. Like don't get discouraged because with a lot of the interviews, like there's just a lot of things to study through. So definitely, like I think the biggest piece of advice is to not get discouraged and just try to learn every time you fail from an interview.
Okay, thanks. Deep, you had a question. If you want to repeat your question.
Sure. So my question was, were there any, I think it was to Cordelia. She said she had given a lot of interviews continuously. So I was like, was there any questions that you saw that commonly came up every single time? Maybe a probability question or a stats question or something like that, if you could share.
Yeah, okay. So whenever I was doing panels, there were always like, so a lot of times in tech interviews, you have different panels with different folks, right? So you might have, depending on where you're interviewing, right? I interviewed with a gaming company. I had like an interview with a UX person and then an interview with a finance person, right? But you're always going to run into a Fermi question. You will always run into a Fermi question. They love to ask Fermi questions. So if you can, go learn what a Fermi question is. It's essentially asking like this wild question, like how many doors are in San Francisco, right? And like, there's no way for me to know how many doors there are, but there's an algorithm I can follow to essentially guesstimate in a really, really efficient and effective way. So go teach yourself all about the right way to answer a Fermi question, because you're guaranteed to run into those.
That's really funny, Cordelia, because go ahead.
Does that include the Monty Hall problem? Because I got the Monty Hall problem.
Okay.
And that's very similar.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely got that one.
Okay, you know what? I also ran into Simpson's paradox with 2 different companies, and I was like, "Come on, this is low hanging fruit, guys." But but the Fermi questions will also help you, like once you learn how to answer those, it'll also help you like structure how you answer like other questions that aren't Fermi questions. So if you take anything away from what I say, go like with respect to like questions on interviews, go look up Fermi questions and learn how to answer those.
Got it. Thank you so much.
So, and Cordelia, I had to laugh because you taught Fermi questions.
I did, right? But I didn't want to, like, I was never gonna be like, oh, I taught this. I made like a show out of it, and I was like, oh, that's a great question. The first thing
Yes.
But it's incredibly useful, and it's like a technique you'll see at almost every company, because essentially they just want to know, like, how do you think? Like, do you get overwhelmed? Are you able to like handle this with grace? Can you kind of break a big problem down into smaller problems and work through an answer? Like, they're just kind of seeing how you can handle it.
Great. I'll have to go tell the old Math 1 gang that this came up.
Yeah.
So I think our next, let me know if you I skipped you on the chat here, but I believe our next unanswered question is from Zach. Zach, you're still there? You want to ask your question out loud?
Yeah, so I know everyone mentioned statistics, but like concerning other like branches or concepts, like, you know, like partial differential equations, or like just like mathematical modeling or something like that. Do any of those things show up like in an interview process, or just part of your job you have right now?
Scott, I think you were just mentioning linear programming.
I did. That one popped up recently, but in general, everything, and this kind of gets, it has to do with the work in general, but we start with sensors in the field, and
Scott,
we're working on Fourier transforms.
Sorry, you and I know what ShotSpotter is. Me as a consumer.
Yeah.
So we should explain. You should explain what ShotSpotter is.
So ShotSpotter does gunshot detection and location in urban environments.
I live in the Mission in San Francisco, so this is very relevant.
And so we cover San Francisco, we cover Oakland, and some other, a lot of other cities too.
And I know from
it's a very heavy physics problem.
Right, it's supposed to tell whether a bang noise is a gunshot or like a firecracker or a car backfiring, and send.
Well, yeah, we do, and we're trying to get away from that and just go, look, we're just looking for the gunfire. That's our major goal. We're not, yeah.
Sorry, but I interrupted.
But we do the classification.
So that's what ShotSpotter is. And what do you're
so
talking
we have
about the Fourier
sensors in the
transforms.
field, and those report locations of possible bangs to a location server that then does further work. And then my part with some of the ML and machine classification comes in, and then we send that to a reviewer as a suggestion, and they then decide whether to publish that alert to the police or not. So at the beginning, it's Fourier transforms. It's a lot of audio processing stuff that we had to learn. Then location-wise, multilateration, and we don't use triangulation as much, but that's also can be paired with the multilateration. So there's a lot of algorithm stuff there. And then we're into
so just briefly, what's multilateration?
Multilateration is a process for using time difference of arrival to find the location of a source signal. So when you have a bang that goes off in the neighborhood, it travels at the speed of sound and propagates outwards. And then to figure out the location from different sources that are using.
So you'd like draw like two circles around things.
Yeah, in the rudimentary version, but this is the, this is to kind of just shortcut that process. It's
gotcha.
Yeah. So a lot of things, but Fourier transforms, multilateration algorithms, you can look up some of those. Those have been around for a long time, since like World War I. And all the classic ML problems.
Right. So now you've built up a big database of like various bangs. And
then we want to label those properly. So then we're into what do we feed to our reviewers to re-review, and that becomes a linear programming problem. There's,
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What are you trying to optimize there? And what?
We're trying to optimize certain classes and get certain classes out of our data set. So like you said, firecrackers, backfires from gunfire. And we have certain objective measurements to use, and then using those to determine what's more likely. It's kind of you're using that for stratified sampling, essentially.
And I suddenly realized that maybe we're getting things that shouldn't go on recording on YouTube, but okay. Yeah, man, if you're sufficiently vague, it's fine. Yeah, so that's all kinds of good stuff. Right, I teach Math 131B, which is all about Fourier Fourier series, but Fourier transform, yay! And that's right. So if you don't know what that is, basically it's breaking down a sound into its component frequencies. And this is something I can tell you as a resident of the Mission in San Francisco. After a while, you get used to say, oh, that's a shotgun. That sounds more like a shotgun, or like, oh, that was definitely a car backfire. You can sort of tell from like a musicality of different bang noises, like what it is. So that's interesting. Yeah, so humans are actually very good up here at doing the Fourier transform.
Humans are very good, and in terms of the ML problem, we're trying to push that.
I mean, like you put an experienced police officer on the corner, they'll know what it is pretty quickly. And I guess you're just trying to train the machine to do it now. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, that Zach, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Did anybody else want to share some other kinds of math that you come? I mean, I guess a lot of Cordelia, you probably see a variety of stuff, and then Violet, you're seeing all kinds of different stuff.
So the company I work for is a biotech company. We grow an actual organism in a bioreactor. So everything I do is science adjacent. It's all like pretty much functionally like modeling problems, because I'm not just trying to like optimize like the yield or the growth of the mushrooms, right? I'm also dealing with like the humidity, right? The flow of gases, right? There's like all these different things going on. We have like an entire like analytical chemistry department, right? Modeling is like a big deal. And so they're like statistics isn't like required, and biotech, there are lots of folks that do just strictly modeling work. So yeah, statistics isn't like, even though it is like the hot topic, because of data science, like there are lots of paths that don't necessarily include that.
Yeah, and Violet, is there some way that you could describe sort of the math that, I mean, I guess I know it's financial math, but sort of what other kinds of math do you use when you're doing financial math?
I guess it's a little bit different. It kind of depends on what position the person is in. So like for me, I don't really do like the loan underwriting anymore. I only really did those for like the small business loans that we were doing. So I work more in like ratios like constantly, but it's pretty much all like sort of things that we can do in Excel. Pretty much like everything is done in Excel. So it's more in that sort of vein, rather than like, I would say maybe like something that was like taken as a class.
And so really they're just sort of relying on your like having sharp analytical abilities kind of.
Yeah, so for me, I do more sort of like, at least in like the numbers aspect of my job, is sort of more like monitoring the loans versus like the people that are credit analysts that sort of originate the loans. They do more, like we get all our information from like financial statements of various kinds. And so they'll do more sort of digging in like the background of the company and why certain things happened, like why there's certain dips, like what was happening, like economically or with like the market for our commercial real estate loans. So in that aspect, it's maybe more so like things to consider that aren't necessarily like numbers, more like additional like external factors.
So yeah, okay. So it's just sort of reading like lots of reports and understanding what is actually happening in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, something I know I'm like terrible with money, so I have no idea. But that sounds great. And actually, so I sort of said, well, Raquel is in data science, so all you were going to do is stats. But maybe actually, Raquel, did you have anything to add to that discussion? Like, is there something else that other kind of math or stats, other kind of math that you deal with that is not statistics?
Let me think. Oh gosh, because you definitely have to know like precision versus recall. I think that's more stats though, right? Like sometimes p-value, type 1 versus type 2 errors. Actually, I have gotten some questions on A/B testing, but I don't know if that falls under stats, or I feel like that's more like design of experiments or something. I don't know. but there's definitely a lot of A/B testing questions when you're doing interviews. And then a lot of SQL, like a lot of my job, I think, was SQL. Like when I was in school, we didn't really get taught SQL. We did mostly R programming, and I think there was one class in SAS programming, but we didn't really use it as much. So I think when I graduated, that was something that I kind of learned on my first job was SQL.
Oh, see, SQL is like it's like 10 million years old, right? Like that language.
Um,
I mean, no offense, but
yeah, it's more like, yeah, like working with databases. I guess it just depends on like when you're working with really large data sets, then that's where they use that a lot. And for example, I think we used R a lot in college, but I found in real life when I was doing things, I had to switch over to Python for certain things just because people use Python a lot for development, you know, like a lot of the engineers you work with, and it just seems better with really large data sets. Like R can't always work as well with super large data sets. And so I think that was one thing that I saw that was that like I kind of wish we'd had more like, you know, like Python classes while we were in school, but I'm guessing that's changed now because I feel like it's moving a lot more towards Python now. Like, but R is still very good in academia, but I feel like when you're in tech, most people around you are using Python.
And as Violet said, this a fact that amuses me to no end. The #1 programming language in the world is, of course, Excel. That's what business does, right? It's all Excel.
Well, yeah, it depends. It's
Definitely
kind of
Excel.
discouraged sometimes.
I don't know if you sort of counted the number of people who do programming, anything that you could call programming, it's probably Excel. It's just like the largest number, like back in the, maybe this is not quite true still, but it's still pretty close to probably still close to true that the largest number of lines of code running in various sectors is all COBOL. Because like I remember, so like 25 years ago, when everybody started getting worried about Y2K, all of a sudden they had to like resurrect the careers of a bunch of COBOL programmers because none of you even know what COBOL is. Never mind. But it's like this really ancient language, like from the 1950s. And but all the day and date stuff was written in COBOL. And so there's a bunch of people who got jobs like changing COBOL to something that somebody still knew how to program in order to save us all from like the Y2K problem, which I guess was okay. So yay, old people. As a 53-year-old man, I say, yay, old people. There we go. Looking forward to. Okay, so
I just wanted to second the SQL stuff and using that. But I also don't consider my day started until I open a Jupyter notebook with Python and pandas. That's really where I started.
There we go. So SQL and Python, interesting. Something that and we'll circle back to that coding question. I think lots of people have more to add to that. There's a question from Rajiv that's been sitting on the. You want to ask your question again?
Sure. Yeah. So a question for Violet. Like, what are your day-to-day responsibilities like, and what hard math skills from your degree do you use day to day?
Oh, and you also asked, are you handling any raw data, which is interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, so pretty much for me, all of the like numbers that I'm using are from like financial statements. So for all of our commercial loans, they all have requirements for things they have to send in. So like balance sheets, operating statements, some things have to be reviewed by a CPA. Like work in progress reports for construction loans. There's different ones for energy loans, but all of those get submitted and I have to collect and review every single one because I'm the only credit admin analyst. So every single one of those financials comes in and I have to go through it. And then I pull numbers from those and do covenant analysis. So it depends on what kind of loan it is. So for like a commercial real estate loan, we would look at like their cash flow versus their loan payments. For construction, we would do a ratio that pulls things from their balance sheet. So like their assets, and liabilities and equity versus like their work in progress. So like construction progress that is currently going on. And that's kind of like mostly where I work with numbers. I do a bunch of other things that I would say are a lot more like financial related and not necessarily super mathy. The covenant analysis is really the primary thing, and that's just done in Excel. So it's not, honestly, it's not a super math heavy job, but I think it does sort of allow me to look at the numbers in the financial statements and maybe see them in like a little bit of a different lens than maybe someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the thing, especially, I mean, this is so. I always try to get somebody who has graduated with a BA math on this panel, and often somebody who's doing something that's not obviously, it's not maybe the first thing you thought of when you say, well, I got a BA math. Well, I was going to go teach, So if you want to think about like what is it you can do with those same skills, you can communicate, as part of what you're doing, you can do things in a written way, and you can analyze and learn things quickly. And that, Violet, that's sort of, yeah. So that's all. Those are the portable skills that you're going to have. Like, you're the person who's going to say like, well, I wasn't trained on that in school, but I'm willing to learn it. You give me a week. Yeah, give me a week. And, because not everybody is going to say, give me a week. Not everybody's willing to do that. Okay, let's see. I think the next question on the chat was from Abisha, and actually, we'll start this with Raquel. Abisha, you want to repeat your question for the recording?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know how much like coding is used, because like I've never coded and I like don't know how to code. But like everyone here sounds like, oh, except for Violet, everyone else sounds like they use coding day to day in their jobs, even though you have a math degree. And like I never, like, because I don't know how to code, like, do you think it'll be more difficult for me to get a job, or like should I just start learning it now?
Yeah, go ahead, Raquel.
Okay, so I was in a similar boat. I mean, I took Java and SAS, and we did some R programming, but I didn't really have any SQL or Python, which is really what a lot of jobs were asking for. So on my first job, I started as an intern and then just became permanent, and I was able to learn all those skills at my job. And so I think it definitely doesn't, it's not going to stop you from getting a job. It might, you might just have to learn it on your job. But it would be beneficial for you to start, I think, online. There's a lot of great resources. SQL you can probably learn it on your own pretty well. And there's a lot of, you can even work with real data. There's a lot of good online resources for that. And similar with Python, I think. I think you shouldn't worry too much. You have a lot of the foundation already. I think that's what will matter the most.
Okay, and now I'm going to say before I'm sure other people have things to contribute here, but before we jump, I'm going to say something incredibly arrogant because that's how I roll. So how much of Python is like, if you know what is going to happen when I say for I equals 1 to 10 print you stink, if you know what's going to happen when you type that roughly and it works, is that sort of what the depth of what programming is in Python? This is sort of my impression. I'm sure that's not true, but
you don't really need much more than that. Maybe less comprehension.
That's it. This is what I tell people all the time. Like, well,
and then,
what's going to happen?
And then you learn how to use, the library you need to use. So whatever that happens to be for me.
Or as people keep telling me who have graduated, well, you just Google it and somebody else has solved it on the internet already.
Stack Overflow is king.
Yeah, you just copy it from Stack Overflow. You kind of have to know what happens when you type in for I equals 1 to 10 print you stink, or you have to have the idea that's what you're going to type in. And I guess for Python is interpreted, right? So you have to know the difference between an interpreter and a compiled language, maybe. Is that correct? Or is Python? Do they have Python compilers now? Which strikes me as strange, but. Or I'm just like talking out. I'm just talking out my butt. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't really need to know that.
You don't care. It just you push the button and it works. Yeah. So who cares? Okay, you don't even need to know that. So it's generally, I think. So is it safe? Is it reasonable to say that if you know how to program in some language where there's like a sequence of then you can catch on Python relatively quickly? So seeing a lot of nods here. That is, I would.
Python is easier than most other languages, and then R is, if you're a math person, it's even easier, I think.
Yeah, because you know the hard part, which is the math bits. Yeah, I think that's probably why Python is so popular. It's because it's not, it's easier to understand than the other ones. That's why everybody uses it. And I do want to put a word in defense of Excel. Actually, I have actually gotten to be like a halfway decent Excel programmer, sort of, at least for my own purposes. Like, I don't know for those who are taking my applied algebra class, I wrote an Excel spreadsheet for reverse engineering GCD problems. So like I know what the answer was. I know what I want the answer to look like, and so I write down the answer, and then up comes the two numbers that whose GCD you want to compute. So that's the sort of thing you can do in Excel, and it really is a programming language if you get into it. Okay, I sound like I'm 3 million years old. That's fine. Okay, next question. I think Monica had a question about being in the MA math program.
Oh yeah, so I'm in the MA program. I'm thinking of taking some stats and ML classes, but I don't think I have room for I want to know what to prioritize,
Cordelia, I think you're a great person to send this question to. So should you do machine learning stuff and stats machine learning classes on the side?
Okay, if I can be completely honest. Okay, so I have an MS from in mathematics from San Jose State. So like almost all of my classes were in like applied math. I had like one stats class, and it was like brutal for me because I was in a class with all the people who were like stats grad students. And what I learned most when it comes to statistics was like side learning I did on my own. And like when it comes to machine learning, I learned like almost everything about machine learning from doing it on my own. Like I built my own neural network from scratch, like in Python, and they're like, I literally learned on YouTube, right? Like, so there are so many free resources, and you can like do it in your time. And there's no like fear of like it affecting your GPA or anything. I'm being honest, right?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
That's funny.
But it's true, right? And so when I say like do Kaggle competitions or like program some regression models in R, right? And use data sets that you find on Kaggle, right? You can teach yourself pretty much like so much that you need to learn about machine learning, like by doing projects. And I would start there. Yeah, because I almost died in some of the stats classes with the stats majors. I have so much admiration for those folks because that's above my pay grade. Yeah.
No, I feel you. Me too. I should teach it at some point so I can actually get some kind of handle on it. But yeah, it's still a mystery to me. So I think our time is winding down. So there's a bunch of requests for connections. But actually, let's go around the horn one more time. And actually, because I actually have a leftover question for Cordelia, and I'll start with Cordelia. We'll ask sort of similar questions to everybody. So is there something about your job? What is there about the world of like work and business or industry or whatever that surprised you the most? And then, Cordelia, I want to start with you because I know you were at a startup, and one of the things that the considerations about your participating in this, for which I thank all of you, by the way, all four of our alumni and Judy. So Cordelia, one of the considerations that came up about your participations is like, can you actually get onto this and be on YouTube and say anything about your company? So what's that? So you're at a startup, is that right?
Okay, so it's not a startup. We're past that stage. We are an established company. We have like contracts with major companies. But I did have to get permission, and I'm under contract with like tons of NDAs, and the company itself, like lots of companies are really private, right? It was very interesting moving from this like academic setting where like everything, like the point is research and to share, right? To like a private setting where like we're doing this for us. And it's also interesting because when you don't have the limitations of like maybe peer review, things move really fast. And Yeah, we take lots of chances. And I love that. I love that I have the freedom. Like, I love my company. I love that they're like, oh, you want to do that? That sounds wild. Go ahead, try it. Let's just do it, you know? We're all just kind of like learning as we go, and everything moves really fast. And it's really exciting. Like, it's really, really exciting. Yeah, so.
Great. That's a great answer about what's different and also about what you love about your job. Scott, is there anything that you felt was sort of a surprise in the transition to the tech sector?
Not so much, actually. Not as much as Cordelia. We are very slow moving for a medium-sized company. We're about 150 people, but we do not move fast. Like we're not quick to make changes. We take it very seriously and do not want mistakes ever. Like it's and a lot of my coworkers, a lot of other people, I literally work with a rocket scientist, PhD in chemistry, who's been programming all his life. We have some PhDs that do data science. We have a lot of academics on our thing, and then we're a public company, so we're trying to be more open without digging ourselves in holes sometimes. But like we always feel like we get the short end of the stick when we try to be open. So I guess we're kind of learning that, but we always try to push to be open. And
but I saw so, but you do like publish papers. I think I saw your name on something.
Yeah. Well, we also have patents, and those are public. There's a lot of things about our company that are just public, and they're out there if you look at the patent numbers and that sort of thing. So a lot of it winds up being public. My company is actually old for being so small. It's actually like 97, was made in 1997. So it's been around a long time and has had time to establish itself. But yeah, just a bit of contrast compared to Cordelia.
Okay, cool. So Raquel, just to sort of finish up, is there anything that you found really surprising? I'm not sure. You might have lost Raquel. Is there anything sort of what's the most surprising thing you found out about transitioning to the real world? There's Raquel. Hi.
Oh, hi.
So the question was, what did you find most surprising? What's something you found really surprising about transitioning from school to the real world?
From school. Well, I guess the surprising thing for me was having to learn some new programming languages. And I think it's just once you're on the job, you have to Google a lot of things. I think you can find the answer, but you don't always learn everything in school. I feel like you learn the building blocks, but so you have like a base, a good foundation, but you don't know everything. And not just that, but one surprising thing is like things keep on moving, and like the way tech improves so much and new things come out is just like insane. And so I think that's something you have to keep track of, but like you might, even when you graduate, like you have to keep learning because there's always something new that's being done. And so it's like a constant thing, kind of like, just like doctors have to keep learning. I think if you're majoring statistics and anything related to that, you still are going to have to keep on learning certain things.
Okay, fantastic. And Violet, this, what's most surprising, or what's something surprising that you found about transitioning to the real world?
I guess I was most surprised by how willing other people are to sort of share their knowledge and to answer questions. That was something I was really scared of when I was first going out there, was that I would sort of like be on my own in like an office, but people are very willing and forthcoming with their knowledge, like, because they want you to do well. And I think that the company that I work for is really great. Like people are very much for like the growth of others. So there are people out there that want to don't want to help you. If you're like really looking for someone, you can definitely find someone to sort of be on your team when you're sort of navigating your way in a new company and in the real world.
Here.
Great. So I think we can't end on a better note than that. Judy, is there anything you wanted to add about that people are going to find as a surprise?
I think you've covered everything. What I want to say is we have a resource in the Career Center. We've had it now for about 3 years. It's called SJSU Squared. And it's basically a access to alumni who we've reached out to over the years, and like you guys here, and they're happy to talk to students. They're happy to share their experiences, what it was like attending San Jose State, how they found their internship, found their jobs, and advice. And so I'm so glad I was able to sit in on this today, because I'm happy to hear or confirm that people do want to share their knowledge, because I find the same thing as I reach out to alumni as well. And all this, all this support. And I've really, I know the other thing I want to mention very quickly is it's been really challenging the last couple of years, of course, for everyone. And I'm thinking, so when I think back to 2020, and internships dropped, everything just dropped when it disappeared. I can't tell you how many students I talked to that took the initiative to continue to learn the skills they knew they would have to learn on their own time. So they learned Python and other skills because they were looking at jobs and said, I'm going to need to know this. I may not be able to learn it at San Jose State, or how am I going to get a class? And so one thing is there's so much more information and so many more resources available that I've really seen, I think really, especially over the last couple of years. And I say students take advantage of it, and all of you. So thank you so much.
All right, let's all thank our panelists, including Cordelia. Thanks, Cordelia, who had to depart a little bit early. Yay, everybody put the clappy hands up. Yay, yay. Listen, so everybody asked about contacts. So here's a way that I think is a reasonable way to get in contact with everybody here. So if I want everybody, okay, and this is for also for sort of like not selfish, but for sort of departmental reasons. Everybody here who's still here, and everybody who's watching this on YouTube, I want you now to go and go find me on LinkedIn and send me a connection invite, and then I am a direct connection to everybody else here, and so then you'll be at most 2 levels away. And is that I can't remember. Is that enough to get in contact with people? Usually, is distance 2 on the graph okay? Judy, do you remember?
Better to be first.
Yeah, it's better to be first, but okay. I think
2 works.
But yeah, 2. At the very worst, I know that if you pay enough money to LinkedIn, it's like a modest fee. They will let you go email people who are like 2 steps away from you. But I think you can actually just contact people who are 2 steps away from you. So I think that's a nice kind of safe way to get in contact with people. So everybody, go send me a request on LinkedIn. I never turn down a request from anybody I know in math, or especially if you say like, hey, Dr. Shu, you told me to go contact you on LinkedIn. So I'll definitely accept those. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody. Take care. Thanks. Goodbye, Internet. And thanks everybody for our panelists again for doing this. Bye.